Welcome to She Sells Radio. Now, whether you are a sales professional, a solopreneur, or maybe you're leading an established team, one of the areas that we all consistently need to grow in is in leadership. And here's the thing, we are all leading first ourselves, then others, right? Whether that's in the sales process or we're leading others to come join us in our companies. And I will say candidly and transparently, this is an area that I am always wanting to grow in myself. And so I am super excited to bring you someone who I think is a true expert on this topic today, so that you can learn along with me. So I'll tell you a little bit about him and his background. My guest today is Mark Williams. He's the president and CEO of Brokers International. If you are not in the financial services industry, it's one of the industry's largest field marketing organizations. So they provide annuity and life insurance solutions to independent insurance and financial professionals around the nation. He has a proven track record of driving transformation, having helped transform companies such as Allianz, the Hartford, and GamePlan from the inside out. And currently, Mark is focused on the future of the insurance industry, from the disruptions of insurtech and robo-advisors to the changing demographics and needs of customers. And he's an avid mentor helping financial professionals navigate the industry. He's also the author of a book that I've been reading, which I'm super excited to ask more about, Lead, Don't Manage. So we're going to dive more into that today. Mark, welcome to She Sells Radio. It's so good to spend time with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I was totally looking forward to this.
Absolutely. And we were just connecting on the Marietta connection before we went live. So we were almost neighbors. I think I left right before you moved in.
Yep.
It's always crazy, such a small world, and special place in my heart for that city for sure. That's where our oldest son was born. So here's one thing I'll say, and I was sharing this with you too. In the pre-chat, our audience is primarily female sales professionals and entrepreneurs, and many of them are in financial services.
Yep.
But we also have men who listen, and a really diverse audience. So one thing I want to say before we kick off, that this conversation is going to apply to everyone, whether or not you're one of our listeners who is in finance. And like I said, I've been reading Mark's book, Lead, Don't Manage, and the principles in here apply to everyone. So I want, from me to the listeners, I want to invite you to tune in to take notes, because you're going to learn from someone who has led for quite some time very successfully in a very competitive industry. And you can apply these principles whether you are, like I said at the beginning, a solopreneur, whether you're looking to scale, whether you're in financial services, it doesn't matter. All the principles are going to be universal. So before we get into anything leadership related, I want to ask you about, I'm calling them the 2 B's: balance and branding. So first question for you. You host your own show, which I've been having fun diving into, called Balance, Not Burnout. And I was very pleased to see that that is a focus of yours in your work, because I think we all, regardless of whether someone's in finance or not, so much of the business world celebrates hustle, burnout. You've got to work 24/7 to be successful, right? This is what's taught. And I've had my own low points of my life coming out of that mindset. And a lot of what we teach now is around, it's aligned with what you teach on the podcast, but on your website, it says, Mark challenges the idea that success as a professional today requires juggling an ever-growing list of priorities. Your attention is one of your most precious resources. And then you say, it's time to ditch hustle culture and replace it with a cultivated sense of intentionality. You talk about trying the rebellious act of balance. I love this. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your inspiration for the show. And was there a time in your career, in your life, when you found yourself in burnout where you said, something's got to change?
You bet. And thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So for your listeners, I'm 55 years old, and I've been in the financial services business for 30 years. And in my earlier years, it was all about hustle. Work as hard as you can, nights, weekends. I traveled for over 20 years, 48 weeks out of the year, almost Monday through Friday. Literally, I thought that was the keys to the kingdom, right? That would get me to where I want to go. Now, in fairness, some of that hard work did lead to some of the positions that I got, and ultimately the opportunity to run a few companies. So I don't want to discount the importance of that. But today, with the increase in technology and just the way people can reach us, I'm answering texts at night. I'm
Mm.
getting a LinkedIn mess. I get 30 or 40 LinkedIn messages a day. Some people are on Facebook and they're on Instagram and on email and phone calls. It does get to be overwhelming and
Mm.
overwhelming for my employees. And I'm watching it happen. Now at 55, I can honestly say it's time to set some boundaries. And had I set boundaries earlier on in my career, I think I would have been even more productive. And I'm
Mm.
seeing that from our own employees. So I'm challenging the, hey, let's work 20 hours a day and give it all I've got. I want you to give it all you got. I just don't think I think you can do it for 8 or 9 hours a day if you work smart, if you're organized, if you prioritize, if you do things that matter, then I think you can achieve the same amount of success and still have time for yourself, for your kids, for your family, for your significant other, for a hobby.
Yeah.
Do something that just makes you happy. Maybe it's yoga or working out or reading a good book or sleeping late. I have seen not only in myself, but in my employees and my peers, when you take a little more time to yourself and you recharge, you do give it more. And so I'm challenging that,
Mm.
and hopefully that will resonate with some folks.
Oh, I'm sure it resonates with everyone. You know, a lot of the listeners here are working mothers. And
Yep.
even today, as we do this interview, now this actually hasn't happened since I've been a mom, but my 3.5-year-old was really sick this morning and I decided to keep him home. So like I've got him home with me today. He's watching a show. I was like, Mommy's got stuff. You can't come in right now.
Yep.
But a lot of our listeners, they're doing that dance every single day and they're working from home. They're taking care of the kids. So it's even beyond the 8 to 9 hours, right? Which most people would deem a normal workday. Like they're dealing with how do I take care of the kids, make sure that they're set
Yep.
up and simultaneously grow and run a successful business. So it's real, right? But I think one of the things you shared was you 55 have this maybe not realization, but this is the your viewpoint on it now, which I appreciate. I agree. You said you thought you might be even more successful earlier on
Yep.
with this intentionality in place. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. There used to be this adage when I was younger. I'll outwork everyone. Um,
Mm.
I want someone to work hard. I want them, but more importantly, I want them to work smart. And with the amount of information we have today on our customers, on our competitors, on our peers, I want, I'll back up. A few years ago, I did a lesson. For every 15 minutes of the day, I jotted down what I was doing for a
Mm.
whole day.
Yeah.
Literally every 15 minutes, I wrote what I was doing. You would be amazed at the amount of time we consider ourselves busy, but are not doing really productive work.
Yes.
So I would go out to see every customer possible when I was younger. I'm not sure I needed to see every customer. In fact, I will guarantee you that there were plenty of customers I called on that I didn't need to visit face to face or as frequently, or they didn't contribute as much to the bottom line to warrant a visit.
Mm.
So had I had the information I have today as to which customers are providing the most value, where are the customers that need me to be there present versus a phone call? Can I work by Zoom? Can I prioritize my day where I make my phone calls in the morning to the most important calls? And in the afternoon, I'm working on maybe it's paperwork or contracts or whatever I'm doing. Can we prioritize our time in a better fashion? And I would argue yes.
Yeah.
Today, and again, few rules of management. If you have someone to delegate information or delegate tasks, learn to delegate. One of the
Mm.
biggest things I see with entrepreneurs, and we have lots of them in the insurance business. In fact, most financial professionals are entrepreneurs. They're hesitant to hire someone, and then when they do, they're not really sure what to give them, how to delegate, what to delegate. I would challenge most entrepreneurs that the best thing you can do is get to be in the position to hire someone to help you.
Mm.
Let them handle the work you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And so that's one aspect, right? Prioritizing what you're doing when you're doing it. And is the work you're doing actively being effective? Or are
Mm.
you just busy?
Yeah.
I have lots of employees that work really hard. I would argue I'm not sure all of them are producing the way they should.
Yeah.
So that's just a small challenge. And I think I've challenged myself to work that way. And again, we're surrounded with so much information, and we have so much more information on our customer base today, on our salespeople. I think there is a way to work smarter, get the same, if not better results, and have more free time than we thought.
I agree. Now, one follow-up question to that. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about some of the clients in our community, and we have women in financial services, and I'm thinking about conversations I've had specifically with a few of them where they are trying to figure out, how do I manage up with the expectations given? So they have management leadership telling them, cold call, smile and dial, go through these hundreds and just keep turning the phones, which is how it's been taught and how it's been done. To them, they're like, I know that if I could be more intentional, that I would approach this a different way. I want to be more intentional with my work. I want to focus, like I have one woman, for example, who does a great job with events and putting on events and bringing in clients that way. Yet her leadership is still looking at, have you made all your calls for the day? And there's some resistance there. I'm curious, from where you're standing, what is your perspective if you feel like your leadership is telling you to do stuff that you know deep down is like check the box rather than intentional action?
You bet. I have run sales organizations my entire career. Results matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, results are what your upline wants. I would offer the challenge to challenge your boss. Let me have one quarter of this year to do it my way. And let me see if I can match the results from doing it the way versus the way you want me to do it. At the end of the day, as a salesperson, you have to see people, you have to present what you're offering, you have to attempt to make the sale, and you have to close.
Yeah.
And if you're really good about studying who you're calling on and when you're calling on them and how effective are you calling on them, the second thing you're going to study is, how effective am I at closing, at my presentation and closing? And out of how many people do I speak to, present to, and close to, how many sales am I making? At the end of the day, if you can prospect in a different way, and you want to challenge the cold calling, which I made thousands of cold calls in my career. If you can see the same number of people, cold calling versus networking versus doing events at a World Congress Center, if you can see the same number of people, present the same number of people, and sell the same number of people your way, I think your boss will get out of your way. And it's a challenge. I literally would walk in and say, I'd like to challenge this. And maybe it's not a quarter. Give me 6 weeks. Give me 4 weeks. Give me 8 weeks, depending on your sales cycle and what you sell. At the end of the day, more sales makes your boss look good. They're not going to matter how you got there as long as you're producing. So I would challenge that. And I think that a really good boss is going to give you that opportunity, because I want you to succeed. And if you think you can succeed in a different way, listen, there's a bunch of ways to drive to my home. If you have a better way than the way I gave you, knock yourself out. I just want you at my home at a certain time, right?
Right.
If you can get there a different way, or it's a scenic route, or you'll meet 6 more people that way than my way, congratulations. I think results matter, and results speak for themselves, no matter how you get it done. So that would be my challenge.
I love that. I think that's great feedback. And then, of course, that assumes that you have a boss who's open-minded and who is in that leadership mindset too, which we'll talk a little bit more about throughout the show as we go. But I appreciate, from your perspective, you saying, I would do this. And I think that's really helpful, because I know I've coached a number of women in our community on how do I tackle this when I feel like I'm just being given minutia to check the box, which no one wants to be doing. So
even in this world where we're juggling, you talked about family and people working with their family. I have been on interviews with my 10 and 12 and 14-year-old son where I said to my prospect, today's Dad's Day, and I brought my son along, and you don't mind, he's just going to sit with me for a little while as I give this presentation. No one ever said no. And in fact, I would tell you it was more endearing having my son with me than not, right? So just small example of where you can press. I think people are different today, and they're more open-minded today, and they're willing to do different things. And they're a little more open-minded with someone juggling their time.
Yeah.
Hey, let's meet by Zoom today. It might be a little bit easier for me to review what we sold or my product by Zoom. Might be a little more efficient for me, and it's going to give you a little more efficiency. I think people are more open to those types of things. So again, I would challenge, if you have a boss that's challenging you, challenge back in a respectful way
Mm.
and say, let me see if I can produce results my way. And I think you might be surprised with most bosses.
Yeah. So good. Speaking of family, I love that you brought up family. So the other B that I wanted to ask you about was branding.
Yep.
So I think you've done a really good job. And I don't say that lightly because I coach a lot of people on branding and building personal brands. That's a huge part of my background.
Yep.
I think you've done a really good job of building a human, connected personal brand on LinkedIn. And I know this is an area where, whether you're in financial services or not, a lot of times people will say, how much do I share of my personal life, especially on LinkedIn?
You
How
bet.
much do I share of my family, of the human touch? And they feel like they have to be robotic. And then if we drill it down even more specifically to advisors or marketers, it's because we coach and work with a lot of them. There can be a lot of confusion, discomfort. What do I share? I've got to work with compliance, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. And so they don't feel comfortable building their brand. So I would, number one, say, go check out Mark, and we'll link all his social in the show
Thank you.
notes here so you can see how he's doing it. But what is your approach to this? Because I think
Yeah.
every time I see a post from you, it's like, it's compelling. It feels personal. There's family a lot of times. So speak to that a little more.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So first off, I will say whenever I speak in front of a group of people, I ask the same question. How many of you have a brand? And most people don't, when you think of a brand, you think of a logo.
Mm,
And most people are surprised that they have their own brand. And this is the way I would describe that. Your brand is whatever people say about you when you're not in the room.
mm.
Right. So, and we all have a brand. And the easiest story I tell is that when you were trick-or-treating as a kid, everyone knew the house that gave out good candy. They also knew the house that gave out
Yep.
raisins or dimes or whatever, right? That was their brand. So you have a brand, regardless of whether you think you do or not. And it's
Mm,
really what people say about you. So the first thing is to understand what your current brand is. How do people view you? Do they respect you? Are you a subject matter expert at work? If you're a salesperson, what do they like about you? You're super knowledgeable. Maybe you're funny. You always have an answer. Understand your brand. That's number one. I believe people buy a salesperson first. They don't buy your product,
mm.
right? If I truly, sales are built on trust. I might be able to sell you one time, but if I'm going to sell you 2 or 3 times in the future, you have to like me. You're buying me. And if you like me, you're more inclined to listen to me, to engage with me, especially if you know me a little bit more than just, hey, I represent this company. So there's enough people in the world that whatever likes you have, you'll find people that have your likes, right? It's going to look at Facebook, look at Facebook groups, for example. There's a group for everything. So I was told early on LinkedIn, 100% be who you are, be your brand. There's times that, look at my beard today, a little unkempt, right? So that's the way I am sometimes. I'm in a t-shirt today. It's warm in my house. I've got someone working downstairs. And so I came in a t-shirt. That is who I am. I'm not a suit and tie person every day, although the CEO might warrant that on occasion. I speak, I stumble sometimes. Every so often, I might cuss once or twice. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable with who I am. And I would offer to most people, especially on LinkedIn, want to see who you are. What are the
Mm.
things that you do? What do you like? I've had photos of me working out, looking horrible, totally covered in sweat. That's part of my life. That's what I do. I love to work on cars. I posted pictures of me with my cars. That's who I am. That's my brand. I don't shy away from it. In fact, I invite it. And the comments that I get, again, just based on my comments, are people appreciate that. People
Mm.
want to know who you are, because when I meet you for the first time, you now have a glimpse of who I am. I'm not a Jekyll and Hyde. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And I think that most people want to see that, and they want to do business with that. And that's kind of how I was coached. And so that would be my challenge for most people. Do you have to go into things I wouldn't share? There's lots of things I wouldn't share. I'm kind of a private person. I might not share really personal information, but I might not share that with a prospect either.
Right.
I'm not going to share personal things that I would only share with my best friend. But if I got a promotion or I got a new car or we went on vacation, I might tell people I went on vacation, had a great time, and this is what I learned on vacation.
Mm,
That I think resonates with lots of people.
yeah. No, I think that's super helpful. Some of my listeners who've listened for a long time know this story, but I share this with clients when they're feeling nervous or uncomfortable about putting themselves out there on social. So my top performing video of all time is one where I actually had a black eye, which
Yeah.
possibly the shock and awe factor. But normally I'm a makeup girl. I like getting done
Yeah.
up. I like all of that, and that's just who I am. And there was a time a couple of years ago, actually, when we were in Marietta, I had skin cancer surgery, and I had a black eye from
Yep.
following the surgery. And I thought, I was doing a lot of coaching for people around video confidence at the time. And I thought, I have to do a video
Yep.
looking not perfect, not done up, just to show that it's okay to be who you really are. And that, I tell you what, that video,
Yep.
it went so above and beyond the others because it was just real and raw. And to your
My,
point, there's boundaries, right? But
yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The number one post I ever had on LinkedIn was a picture of me handwriting cards. So every
mm,
year I handwrite cards to our employees. We have about 120 employees, so that takes me, a good few days. It's a lot of
yeah.
cards. It's a lot of handwriting. Um, and it was just a picture of me handwriting cards, and I said, do something a little bit different around the year, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But it was me in my office handwriting.
Mm,
And I think it was, hey, that's one of the tasks that I do. It's not really noteworthy, but it's real. That's what I do. And it got a lot of people, not only just the fact that I wrote the cards, but the fact that that's who I am. That's what I do.
yeah.
It's one of the things that I do. And I think people are interested in that. So
Yes.
yeah, I think I hate to use the word authentic or that seems to be the buzzword lately, but there is some truth to that. Be
It's
who you
real.
are. Let people see who you are. So when I meet you, hey, I know a little bit about you, or at least your personality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of you as a leader and so your book, Lead, Don't Manage, you wrote that during COVID. Is that right? That was
A
it
little
was
bit
around the
before, but
time,
yes,
a little bit before
finalized it and
COVID.
everything. Yes.
Got it. So you speak to the difference between conventional leadership and transformational leadership. And I know so much of your brand and what you speak on is around leadership, and we don't have enough time today to get into all the things, but I want to ask you a couple of high level questions that I think will be
Sure.
really valuable to our audience. So can you speak first and foremost to what is that difference? And how do we become transformational leaders versus conventional leaders?
So conventional leadership, hierarchical. I have a downline. I'm more concerned with, are you in the office today versus not in the office?
Mm,
Transformational. I work on a team. I have 125 employees. We're a team. My receptionist, as is important to me as my CIO. She has a different function, but she's part of the team. She is the first interaction that anyone has with my company, either telephonically or when they're walking in. That first impression is important to me, and it's important to the company. So, how do you value your team members, and do they feel valued?
mm,
Do they know that you care about them? I have a personal. I try to create a personal connection with almost every one of my employees. What are their kids' names? What are their pets' names? What do they do on the weekends? It's important to me that they know I'm invested in them, not only just as an employee, but as a person. I would argue that's different today. That's a different type of leader today than what we were taught as leaders 30 years ago.
mm.
More of that. You were talking about the leader before. Sit down, make your 100 dials, right?
Yeah.
Not really concerned with what you do on the weekends. That's your personal time. Get to know your employees. An employee who is having trouble at home isn't a happy employee at work and is probably less productive. Get to know
Mm,
what their issues are. Maybe you can assist, or maybe you can help, or give them a little bit more time off so they can fix the things at home and become a better employee at home. That's a transformational leader. That's a leader who is invested in his employees, not just financially,
yeah.
mentally, physically. Those things matter. And that's probably the easiest thing for me to base it on.
Yeah, no, it's great. And again, I sense it could be a much deeper dive conversation too. One thing I want to ask based on that is, let's say that we're leading someone and we can tell that they're having a hard time, right? And you said find out what's going on. How do we, obviously there has to be a foundation of trust laid ahead of time for that,
Yep.
but how do you enter into that conversation with someone without making them feel defensive or like they can't share what's going on? How would you open up to that?
That's a good question. And especially as a boss, right? Sometimes it's
Yeah,
really difficult. And if I'm honest, some employees will never share information with their boss for fear of, oh, I don't want my boss to think I'm not doing I'm not doing a good enough job or something like that.
sure.
They don't necessarily they don't have to share it with me all the time, right? We have an HR department, we have
Yeah.
managers, their upline manager, they have peers in the company. But I think it stems from trust, right? What kind of relationship do you have with your employees? You're right. If I didn't know my employees' names and I didn't know their family names, you're right, there would be no basis of trust. I think if you're a genuine person that really likes their employees and is concerned with them, there's already that basis there.
Mm,
But what I would tell my employees and what we have said is make sure someone knows that we can help you so that we can assist in the time of need. I spend so much more time at the office than I do at home. I am concerned with people.
mm,
I've had rough patches in my life where I didn't give my work 100%. Of course, that's life. I often share that. Listen, I understand. I've been in situations where I went through divorce 20 some odd years ago.
mm.
When you're going through that, you're not giving it all at work. I let people know it. That's true. I've lived it. So I might share a personal story to say, listen, if things are happening at home, I get it. If you need a couple hours off or a day, hey, let's sit down with your manager and HR and see if we can't work that out.
Mm,
I think it's just that it's maybe just priming the pump, right? Share a little bit about yourself or that you've been in a situation that was struggling. Listen, any CEO, entrepreneur has had rough times. Every single one.
yep.
Whether it's not knowing where the next customer comes from or the next paycheck or job security, everyone's gone through that. Share a little bit of that. Let people
Mm.
know, yeah, I was scared. I didn't know where my next paycheck was coming from. That often helps.
Yeah, perfect. Which is again, a buzzword, but the authenticity piece
You
that
bet.
ties in with that as well. So let's say that someone is listening, Mark, and they're hearing, okay, so you're leading 120 employees. You've got this mega team that you're leading, and maybe they are a solopreneur, and
Yep.
maybe they have a VA. So let's just say maybe have a VA, but they know it's time to scale and they are done wearing all the hats. Can you speak a little bit to how do we approach hiring and leadership in those really early stages where we're bringing on our first couple of employees? And then maybe any mistakes or pitfalls that we should avoid?
Yeah. The first thing is to be brutally honest with yourself. Um, uh, Lots of good salespeople aren't good managers. And that just is, and
Yeah.
that's okay. They're great salespeople. Lots of salespeople don't know how to manage people and are very difficult managers because they expect people to be just like them. So the first I would say is take an inventory of yourself. Who are you? What are your strong suits? If you're not a good manager, you need to find someone who possibly is a good manager, right? So be
Mm,
honest with who you are and understand who you are. Understand exactly what you need the position to do. Oftentimes people will turn to a family member or someone a coworker or a peer that just ran out of work and they hire the wrong person, right? Because they're friendly, they know someone who's out of work, so they're going to put them in, but they're not a fit for the role.
mm,
That's a challenge. Make sure you understand what the role is. What are you hiring for? What are the 5 or 6 or 7 accountabilities you're going to pay for? And make sure that they're very clear. This is at least I'm hiring you. These are the 5 to 7 things I need that essentially your job revolves around. There might be some other things, but these are the accountabilities I need you to do. And then make sure I'm matching the right person with those accountabilities, the right skill set.
got it.
And then make the leap. Make the leap. You will be surprised, much like most entrepreneurs did when they decided to become entrepreneurs, they made the leap. And many of them will say it was the scariest but best thing I ever did. I often hear that same about hiring an employee. I was so
Mm,
afraid I couldn't give up the X number of dollars to hire someone. And many of them will say the first employee was the hardest. And then they did it and their business boomed.
mm.
Just make the leap.
So do it before you're ready, which is what people say. I think it's a general good rule of thumb for
Yeah,
life,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And with those accountabilities, so this is maybe getting really granular, by the way. in case you can't tell, sometimes podcast episodes are coaching sessions for Elise that everyone gets to listen
You
and,
bet,
and
sure.
benefit from. So this is really helpful. Thank you. With those accountabilities, are those all, are any of them results? Like you're accountable for X results, or is it all action driven because you believe if someone's taking the right actions, we're going to get the results as a natural byproduct?
Good question. And I wish there was a flat answer, but it all depends on who you're hiring and what you're hiring for.
Got it.
And I'll say what you're hiring for, not who you're hiring. If you're an entrepreneur, financial professional, it might be admin work. And that's the thing I see the most. You're not hiring someone to call on your customers. You might be calling them to do service work, right? Call on a customer to make sure they got their policy or answer any questions. But you're really that person, generally speaking, in financial services, your first hire is someone to help you do administrative work. Right. So making sure that they understand what they're doing, answering the phone, taking messages, setting appointment times, resetting appointment times, calling the companies that you represent, following up on paperwork, right, documenting things. Those might be action-oriented items that you are taking a look at how well they're doing. Are they setting my appointments? How well do they speak on the phone? Are they going through all of the different companies that I have to call and make sure things are updated, right? That's tactical, and you can actually see that they're doing a good job or not doing a good job. That's for us in that type of environment. If you're a small entrepreneur who owns a coffee shop, it might be your first employee at the coffee shop, right? Someone that's going to make the coffee. Those are more, yes, these are how do they greet the customer? When they're really riled up and it's super busy, can they still make all the coffee and make sure that they're, pulling things from the supply room? I'm making things up, but those might be a little bit of personality, right? How is the personality fitting in? And are they doing the work that they need to get done? So it all depends on the role you're trying to fill, but you have to be really specific to the employee what you're holding them accountable for. They might come back and say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to stock the storeroom when the truck came. You never told me that. I was supposed to greet customers and make coffee. So there was a breakdown in communication, and now it's not fair because you set an expectation that the employee didn't understand. So again, clear expectations of what I'm doing and how well are you communicating with them?
Makes total sense. Raising my hand as someone who has said, wait, you're not a mind reader, when I'm clear that they're absolutely reading my mind. So speaking of that, and just a couple more questions here,
Sure.
and so good. But I want to speak to the accountability piece a little bit. And I'll just share with a lot of the members of our community, and gosh, even in my own life too, I know that when I am tasked with holding someone accountable, it can feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. And I think there could be this pendulum swing. And again, I'll be vulnerable and transparent here and say, this is something that I've experienced in my own leadership style, which is why I'm working on intentionally, how can I grow and cultivate in this area where it's almost an extreme from going like, you have to either micromanage, and no one wants to do that. We don't want to micromanage, but we feel like we have to maybe just wanting to let people go free range and do whatever they want to do. So obviously there's some sort of a middle ground and balance between those two. If someone is listening and they're saying, yes, I have done that pendulum swing. Yes, I relate to what Elise just said. How do we find and cultivate that balance in leadership style ourselves?
One of the biggest, I don't want to call it a mistake, but one of the toughest things for any person that manages someone is being a bad guy. No one wants to feel like a bad guy. No, I don't believe anyone wants, like, it's an uncomfortable feeling. So now I have to come to an employee who isn't doing a very good job. And I have to tell them that. I don't want to be the bad guy. And so oftentimes we don't, or we let it go on way too long, or they become a disruption. You're really, if you view it a little bit differently, that you're doing them a disservice. I know that if I came to a seminar that you were giving, and I had some critiques that might make you better, as an entrepreneur, most people want to be better. Even as people, we want to be better. If I ever said something to offend you, I would be horrified. Please tell me if I offended you. The same way with work. Hey, we had an expectation to do this. I thought I was pretty clear about it. If you're having trouble getting it done, please share that with me. But right now, I'm not seeing the results. I'm not seeing the effort that I thought I was supposed to get. Having that conversation is a benefit, not only to me, because I need the job done, but it's a benefit to my employee to know where they stand. It might not be a good fit. it might not be that you're the perfect person for the role, in which case it's better for you to move on and it's better for me to move them on. That's a tough conversation, and a lot of people shy away from that. It's the number one mistake I think most even companies make is they're not giving a fair assessment of the work being done. And oftentimes in big companies, I get rid of the person I don't like in my department. I send them off to another department. Well, that's not solving the problem for the company. That's just solving the problem within the department.
Yeah.
So I think it's being honest. And again, it's all about communication. How do I speak to you? Listen, we've all had those uncomfortable conversations with a significant other, or you should, right? Something doesn't feel right. You end up scared of that conversation, but oftentimes it's the best conversation you ever had because now they understand how you feel. So I would challenge people to have those types of conversations the minute you feel it. Something isn't feeling right. And even say that, hey, something isn't feeling right. I asked you to do these 4 things, only 2 of them get done. Is it something you need from me? Maybe I'm holding you back. Maybe I am micromanaging you. And my employee turns around and goes, yeah, you're over my shoulder all the time. I'm so self-conscious. I'm afraid of doing anything. That's a really fair answer. And I wouldn't get it unless I asked them. So that's probably, I know it's easier said than done. So I know it's easier said than done, but much like any difficult conversation, we usually feel so much better after having them.
Yes. And I appreciate what you shared about the moment you feel it, address it.
Yeah.
Because it is the most uncomfortable thing to do, but the more it sits there and stews, that it's not going to get any better as well. So yeah, absolutely. Let me ask 3 final questions. So first one, what do you hope your legacy is as a leader?
I'm super honest and transparent about the fact that a few years after I'm gone, no one will remember who I am, right? Like think about old bosses that you've had. Right?
Yeah.
I want, as my legacy, I'd really like, there's a phrase I heard long ago, if I can help you get where you want to go, I'll get where I want to go.
Yeah.
I would hope that people would say, you know what, he was invested in me and he really helped me, or he gave me some advice, or he was just a kind person. That would be wonderful for me. It was great working for him. A few people have moved across the country to work for me. It was the greatest compliment ever.
Wow.
They literally picked up their families to come work with me. I was so humbled by that. That's probably the best, something that anyone ever did for me. I would hope that would be my legacy. Just a good guy to work for.
Yeah. Amazing. Something I love asking when we have men on the show, since it's primarily women listening, is I'd love to pay tribute to an important woman in your life. So if you think about a woman in your life who's important to you,
without a doubt, don't even have to think about it.
There you go.
My wife.
So your wife. So what's the number one life lesson that you've learned from your wife?
My wife makes me, and it's such a cliche, she makes me want to be a better person. She is supportive. She pushes back when I'm not right, when I'm wrong, and she isn't shy to say it. She is always in my corner. She has been supportive, told me not to do things when I was going to do something stupid. I give her 85% of my success.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Final question, and this one is simple, but if someone wants to go to connect with you to learn more about what you do, listen to your podcast, read the book, find out about BI, how they can partner with you, what's the best way for people to connect?
You bet. So I do have, it sounds so funny. I have a website, markwwilliams.com. I would really invite people to reach out on LinkedIn as well. I do respond to messages that I get on LinkedIn, unless you're trying to sell me something that I don't need. But in general, if you'd like to reach out, if you'd like to have a conversation, if you're interested in something that we talked about, if you want me as a speaker, I'd love to do that as well. My website's got all of my information, my contact information, all of that. So that's the best spot.
Perfect. We'll link it in the show notes. It's markwwilliams.com, but we'll put the link there, and we'll link to your LinkedIn as well. This was so fun. Thank you. Like I said, I'm getting so much out of reading your book. So whether someone is in financial services or not, if you want to grow and make an impact in the world and help serve others, I cannot recommend enough. Get Mark's book. We'll link it in the show notes as well. lead, don't manage, connect with him, and go share this episode as well with someone who you think can benefit from it. So Mark, thank you again for being here today. This was
Oh,
great.
super fun. Again, thank you so much for asking, and wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, my listener, thank you as always for tuning in. Like I said, we'll link all the goodies so you can connect with Mark and his work in the show notes. Thank you as always for being a listener of She Sells Radio, and we'll see you on our next episode. Bye for now.